We are live. Hello, critical thinkers. Hope all is well. Today, as I always promise, we are going to go deeper into the Messiah Nantwi correctional officer arraignments that occurred this past Wednesday. So, for those of you who don't know, there was an incarcerated individual at Mid-State Correctional Facility who was savagely beaten in front of the National Guard. That beating resulted in the death of Messiah Nantwi, and we are here today with the indictments of those correctional officers and the arraignments which occurred this past Wednesday, April 16th. So I've covered this a couple of days ago. I covered the arraignments. I covered the follow-ups on the Robert Brooks correctional officers coming back to court to discuss their either acceptance or denial of their plea deals. And so what I'm going to do today is actually play the press conference that occurred with the special prosecutor, Onondaga County District Attorney William Fitzpatrick. In that press conference, we also had a couple of other individuals of importance who were there. Most notably, you had the Department of Corrections Commissioner Daniel Martuscello III, who made some comments and took some questions. So, what I want to do first is actually show you the correctional officers involved in the Messiah Nantwi beating death. I'm going to pull this up, and this is actually from TikTok. Okay, so I will go from the top row, left to right. By the way, this shows what their top charge is. The top charge. Most of these correctional officers faced multiple charges, multiple charges. Okay, so going from left to right, from the top, we look at the highest charge for Jonah Levi, which was murder in the second degree. Moving on to the individual top center, Caleb Blair, who was his top charge murder in the second degree. You have Sergeant Francis Chandler. His top charge was manslaughter first degree. Going to the center middle row, you have Thomas Eck, manslaughter first degree. You have Craig Clemick, manslaughter first degree. You have correctional officer Daniel Berger, manslaughter first degree. You have Sergeant David Ferrone, all the way on the right. His top charge was manslaughter first degree. Going to the bottom row, you have correctional officer Nicholas Vitale with conspiracy. Next up in the center, you have Sergeant Michael Efer. His top charge is filing a false instrument. And then you have Sergeant Donald Slauson. His top charge, it was tampering with evidence. This was taken from TikTok, and I got this from a TikToker by the name of True Voices from Within, who does a lot of content in regards to those individuals who are incarcerated. So when you have a moment, go over to TikTok, go see True Voices from Within. Also, another good TikToker that covers issues facing incarcerated individuals is Department of Truth. So definitely go and check those two channels out because they're doing a lot of great work in the realm of criminal justice and bringing to light the atrocities occurring with those individuals who are incarcerated. So I went ahead and removed that image. And what I'm going to do next is actually play the press conference. This press conference, just to set it up, a little caveat. The press conference itself is about 40 minutes long. I may, for interest of time, I may fast forward some pieces of it, but for the most part, I'm going to play it, right? Again, I made a promise to everyone here that we are going to go deeper than what the mainstream media is sharing and telling you. And in addition, yeah, I think it's important sometimes you want to give summaries of news, you want to give people the high level points, but this channel is really for people that want to go deeper and want to really get all of the nuances about the story And I believe this press conference is really a treasure trove. It's really a gold mine of information because so much is said in terms of what happened to Messiah Nantwi that day. And so you have multiple crimes occurring, you have multiple correctional officers. In this case, there are 10 who were charged and arraigned, but you do have other correctional officers or other staff who are cooperating with the special prosecutor. So I'm going to add this to the stage and we will go through it. I will pause it. I will give you my commentary. I will give you my feedback on what's occurring. I'll try not to stop it too much, but for the interest of not getting a copyright strike, I need to interact with the video and give my feedback. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up now and we will go over it. Here we go.
No COs required any medical intervention. I was appointed special prosecutor shortly after the incident and assisted by my own investigative team, officials from the Department of Corrections and Community Service, and the New York State Police. We began an investigation and wanted to assist the grand jury in answering the following questions. Who, if anyone, was justified in using physical force against Mr. Nantwi? Two, if initial force was justified, did it remain appropriate and proportionate to the danger presented, if any, throughout the encounter? And did it follow DOCCS protocols? And third, were efforts made to thwart my investigation by deception, concealment, or destruction? The grand jury has answered those questions as follows. The first count charges two individuals, corrections officers Jonah Levy and Caleb Blair, with depraved mind murder, not an intentional murder, but a murder so depraved and so wanton and disregarding of human life that New York law allows it to rise to the level of intentional murder. They are charged based on their actions, not only in Mr. Nantwi's room, but also in the stairwell and in the infirmary. Secondly, the grand jury.
Just to pause it really quick, one thing that you will hear, which is similar to the Robert Brooks case, is that Messiah Nantwi suffered multiple beatings. DA William Fitzpatrick is going to speak about three instances, three beatings that occurred during the entire interaction. I thought that was important to note because this is very similar to what happened to Robert Brooks.
Has returned charges of manslaughter in the first degree, intent to cause serious physical injury resulting in death. Those corrections officers are again Levi and Blair, and additionally Thomas Eck, Craig Clement, and Daniel Berger. They are also charged with gang assault in the first degree, intent to cause serious physical injury, and doing so. A Class B violent felony. Same individuals, Levy, Blair, Eck, Clement, and Berger. Gang assault in the second degree, intent to cause simply physical injury and resulting in serious physical injury. And this time, the same individuals, in addition to Sergeant Francis Chandler. Manslaughter in the second degree has been charged against Sergeants David Ferrone and Francis Chandler. The theory of prosecution on that count is that these two sergeants in a supervisory role in Mr. Nantwi's room did absolutely nothing to stop the beating that he was enduring and offered absolutely no assistance to him, completely contrary to DOCCS protocols and guidelines.
Okay. I just had to stop it there really quick because I wanted to make another connection to the Robert Brooks murder. Is that in this case we have sergeants charged who watched the beatings and did not do anything about it. A lot of people have been asking me what the heck is happening with Sergeant Trombley and the Robert Brooks murder case. Sergeant Trombley was the quote unquote the leader, the head of the goon squad that went out and beat. At this point, it's probably safe to say hundreds of incarcerated individuals allegedly at Marcy and other facilities within that hub. So here we have the sergeant being charged in the Messiah Nantwi beating death, who witnessed and did not stop it. So very important to note.
Then the grand jury began to focus on the cover-up, as amateurish and ineffective as it was. In the sixth count, David Ferrone, Francis Chandler, Jonah Levy, Caleb Blair, Thomas Eck, Nicholas Vitale, Daniel Berger, and Craig Klemek are charged with conspiracy to offer a false instrument for filing. DOCCS has a form known as 2104A, which requires the individual corrections officer who was present to indicate who was present at the scene, what force was used by the author of the report, and what force was witnessed by the author of the report. In addition to charging conspiracy.
I have to pause it again because I just realized something. I did a video, and a video in which I covered the Sarah Wallace New York 4 stories of incarcerated individuals. And in one of those stories, an attorney spoke about this very form in terms of not including specific correctional officers on the form so that they won't be implicated. When I have the opportunity, I'm going to pull that up and do another. I'll do a video on it. But exactly what's occurring here, we have seen before multiple times. We've seen this. So what this sheds light on is the playbook that these correctional officers use to beat individuals and get away with it. Not anymore.
The grand jury must also allege overt acts. In this case, the overt acts alleged are: number one, that every single use of force reported by these individuals omitted two people, Sergeant Chandler and Corrections Officer Levi, and that was done intentionally. The second overt act, it is alleged that the reports were in fact filed and known to be false when they were filed. And the third overt act alleged is that on the following morning, at a diner called Raspberries in Oneida County, all of the co-conspirators met and agreed to continue with the story that everything they did was completely proper. David Ferrone, Francis Chandler, and Thomas Eck are also charged with conspiracy and conspiracy to tamper with physical.
By the way, you really can't make this up. So you have correctional officers beating to death an incarcerated individual, and then they conspire at a place called Raspberries to cover up the crime. This is straight out of a Hollywood film.
Evidence. These three individuals, along with others known to the grand jury, allegedly concocted a scheme to posthumously plant a weapon in Mr. Nantwi's room. The overt acts alleged in favor of that conspiracy, alleged overt act number one, is that the weapon itself was found earlier that day in a completely unrelated incident. The second overt act, a body-worn camera intentionally hung in a men's room at the infirmary of Midstate, caught two of the co-conspirators discussing the conspiracy to plant the weapon, again posthumously, on Mr. Nantwi. And the third overt act alleged is that defendant Chandler, actually in front of a group of all of the corrections officers, asked for a volunteer to have someone come forward and say that it was he that discovered the weapon. And it is alleged that that quote unquote volunteer was Thomas Eck.
Okay, I wanted to pause it and just say two things. Really think about this. The body cameras were not being used for their primary purpose, but they act as evidence in this case. So really think about the providence of God in terms of these officers who were not using their body cams appropriately, but in this case, there is body cam evidence that catches several of the correctional officers conspiring to cover up the crime. I thought that was just absolutely fascinating. So I'll just jump back to this.
Mr. Slauson, Corrections Officer Donald Slauson, is charged with tampering with physical evidence, and it is alleged that he had cleaned up the holding cell of all of Mr. Nantwi's blood over at the infirmary. And the final defendant is Sergeant Michael Eifert. He is charged, again, with offering a false instrument for filing, allegedly falsely asserting that he had no opportunity to look into the room and, in fact, saw no use of physical force against Mr. Nantwi. I want to thank the staff, my office. Probably 10% of my office has been involved in corrections officers allegedly committing homicides over the last 2 months. And I'm joined here with Senior Assistant DA Sarah Fitzpatrick and Senior Assistant DA Alphonse Williams, who have done an incredible job in helping me present this evidence to a grand jury. I also am joined here today by Ruben Lindo and the Reverend Kevin McCall, who are both individuals who have supported me throughout my endeavors in an effort to get justice, not only for Mr. Brooks, but for Mr. Nantwi as well. I don't believe that anybody from Mr. Nantwi's family is here. The only individual from his family that I've spoken to is through his attorney, his dad, and I understand that his dad is not in the greatest of physical shape and apparently was unable to travel here today. I also
Very quickly, in a previous live stream from a couple of nights ago, people on the chat had some criticism in terms of why no one from the Nantwi family was there. So the understanding is, as William Fitzpatrick mentioned, the father is ill, most likely medically fragile, and also it's quite a distance from New York City to Oneida County. People have lives, they have to work. So hopefully that sheds some light as to why the family members were not there. It might be a very large burden to get up to Oneida County.
I want to thank Troopers Tim Doherty, Bill Casey, Tom Quilter, Denny Doherty, Andy Wilmot, and if I may reserve a special spot for Olivia Tabor, who have been just incredible in helping me present this case. In addition to the work done by my office, as I mentioned, DOCCS has been unbelievably supportive. Every single thing I have asked of them, they have gotten for me. I mentioned Chris Martuscello last time I was here. I now want to turn the microphone over to the Commissioner of DOCCS, Daniel Martuscello, for his comments. Dan?
Just very quickly, I noticed there's a good amount of people in the chat. The likes are only 3. If y'all can do me a big favor, big favor, please like the stream while you have the opportunity to before you forget. People typically forget, so please like the video, like the stream. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to first start with offering my sincerest condolences to the Nantwi family. The murder of Messiah is really a senseless act that no family should have to ever experience or endure. In response to this incident, I immediately deployed my Office of Special Investigations, as well as made immediate referrals to the New York State Police and the Attorney General's office, who quickly identified District Attorney Fitzpatrick's office to take over as a special prosecutor to make sure that we're keeping people accountable for any wrongdoing that may have occurred. After what occurred at Marcy back in December, I vowed that I would not allow violence to become normalized within the system. And I'm committed to this goal, and that has been unwavering. Both my executive leadership team and I are continuing to work with the internal and external stakeholders to ensure that we assess our culture and determine areas that we can improve. The people entrusted to our care deserve better than this, and I'm committed to impactful change to an end the violence within the system, both for incarcerated and staff alike. The bottom line is we must do better to change our culture and the way we approach this work. I strongly condemn the behavior of those staff members involved in the murder of Mr. Nantwi, as well as making sure that we hold them accountable to the highest standards of public safety. And today, this is one step forward in making sure that we bring justice to him and his family. I'm committed as we move forward to structural and cultural change that ensures the basic dignity and rights and respect of all people, whether they're incarcerated or working in the system. There's no place for violence in the correctional system, regardless of who perpetrates the crime or the violence inside of our institutions. I want to take the opportunity to thank the Superintendent of State Police, his staff, the District Attorney, and members of his staff for their commitment to ongoing public safety and for starting to bring justice in this case. Thank you.
Okay, I just had to pause it there quickly. I wanted the opportunity for everyone to hear the entire statement without interruption. So I'm going to try to be objective and give you an opinion about it. It's obvious he's reading a prepared media statement from his press person. Okay, and so everything he said, just think about it as a load of horse manure. And I'm trying to put this very, very gently and mildly. So again, people can say anything they want. People that are incarcerated should who deserve more, should be treated with respect, don't deserve the abuses. But when you are heading up an organization that employs individuals that beat on a regular basis and murder those people who are incarcerated, you have to take ownership of this problem. This culture is not going to change overnight. I understand that. Changing the culture of corruption in the Department of Corrections is a daunting task. It's not something that's going to change overnight. Even over the even over the course of a year, that's not going to change. The cancer is so deep into the bone. It's so deep that this is not going to change quickly. This is going to take years in the making, and this is the start with the arraignments, indictments, and convictions because we cannot get too excited. We have to see these individuals convicted for what they've done in the Robert Brooks case and the Messiah Nantwi case, but you also have other individuals who have not been murdered, who have not lost their life, who are suffering, many of whom in solitary confinement. For example, Christopher Quiles, Keon Walker. You have just countless names, countless names. So let's go back to this press conference.
Appreciate it. I'm not sure what number of superintendent I'm on in my 40-year career as a prosecutor. I think it's up there, but I don't know that I could point to one that I've had a better working relationship with than the current one. And I also want to again publicly thank him for the assistance that I've gotten from the New York State Police. And as a former president of the National DA's Association, who has traveled all over this country, I can tell you that I don't know of a state police agency that is more accomplished and more qualified than this one. And a lot of it has to do with Superintendent Stephen James, who'd like to say a few words. Super. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm being called. So, excuse me. Who is it?
Go.
The boss at home. Good afternoon. Thank you, Fitzpatrick. Today, the New York State Police, certainly in coordination with the Onondaga County District Attorney's Office, under the authority of the grand jury, there's been criminal action taken in connection with the death of 22-year-old Messiah Nantwi, as part and parcel of why we're here to discuss. As of this afternoon, New York State Correctional Officers have been indicted and they've surrendered themselves to the state police for processing. Now, these arrests, without a doubt, they follow an intensive investigation by members of the state police, of which I'm thoroughly proud of the work that they've done. The Bureau of Criminal Investigation, a forensic identification unit, and other specialized teams. Their work, without a doubt, was instrumental in bringing this case together. Since this incident has occurred back on March 1st at the Mid-State Correctional Facility, our investigators, they've worked tirelessly. They've undergone facts to determine the truth with regard to what happened inside the walls of the correctional facility. While certainly I'm limited in what I can convey regarding the specifics as far as the details of the case, because the matters are before the court, and certainly as the special prosecutor knows. But I want to make one thing absolutely clear. No one should operate or is expected to be above the law. That's whether you're a citizen, that's whether you're a police officer, or whether you're a corrections officer. That is of particular note. The evidence presented to the grand jury, it suggests that there was a gross abuse of authority that took place. And I lay it out as an abuse that has led to the loss of a man's life. Obviously, that's not acceptable, and it obviously wasn't tolerated. Our role in law enforcement is not just to enforce the laws, but to protect the public in general. That means investigating criminal acts wherever they occur and wherever they may happen, whether in the city streets or behind the walls of correctional facilities.
Okay, I just wanted to stop it for a quick second. Most likely, I think I'm just going to fast forward this piece. This is no disrespect to the state investigator. I'm more focused on what William Fitzpatrick is saying and on what Daniel Martuscello III says in this press conference. So the state troopers, the state detectives and investigators, they have investigated many cases. And in fact, when someone dies in DOCCS custody under suspicious circumstances, they come on and conduct an investigation. They may make a recommendation and share their findings, but ultimately, it's not the state detectives, investigators' responsibility to prosecute these crimes. It's the district attorneys of the counties that they conduct these investigations in to make a decision whether individuals are going to be charged. So I'm just going to fast forward it slightly to bring up, here we go, to bring back up William Fitzpatrick.
Anybody else standing up there?
Could I ask a question for the commissioner? It has to do with the body cam policy. We were here in February, and Mr. Miller was talking about how the new rules on body cameras and fixed position cameras would be very effective. And yet, sadly, within a month, we had this. Is this a factor of COs not following procedure? Does the procedure have to be revisited? How could this happen with the inaction of the new body cam policy?
Yeah, so after the incident with Mr. Brooks in December, I enacted a statewide policy that a facility that had facility-wide body cameras, that they'll be on at all times while individuals are on duty. Some facilities are not fully operational at this time, where only supervisors have them, but at the Mid-State Correctional Facility, they are fully deployed. So clearly, staff were acting outside of the policy, which you heard the DA speak about the violating all DOCCS policies as well as their oath of office. So we continue, when we find those instances, to discipline staff under the collective bargaining agreement to make sure we drive that message home. The policy is not, please do it. It's our policy. This is what you must do or be subject to discipline. And in this case, obviously, it led to criminal behavior, which was uncovered by the district.
If there's an interaction with an incarcerated individual, the cameras must be on.
Just stopping it there for a quick second. So this is very common when you have these officials or even other correctional officers, they're questioned about these incidents. They regurgitate, they spit out what the policy is and what should have occurred and what should have happened. Okay. Daniel Martuscello III also spoke about this is our policy and it's not a request, they must do it. And he mentioned the word discipline. Understand this. And I'm going to keep reiterating this in every video if it does apply, that there's very little discipline, if not none, for individuals who break departmental policy. There are individuals beating other individuals who are incarcerated, and there are no consequences. DOCCS has attempted to terminate correctional officers, and they are successful only 10% of the time. 10%. Really think about how can you operate a business? How can you operate an organization when you have no control of who you can terminate? it goes through an outside arbitrator. That's absolutely crazy.
For all COs and sergeants.
Yeah,
Correct?
so correct. The body camera must be powered on at all times. And then when they're interacting with an incarcerated person, it must be activated to capture that event.
Commissioner, you said that you made that vow to end violence in the prison system after Robert Brooks. Of course, Mr. Nantwi is allegedly murdered after Robert Brooks. What changes will now be made to ensure we aren't standing here again in a month?
Yeah, so when we began down the road of really doing a culture assessment after the Robert Brooks case, we hired external law firms to conduct a full review of the system, which is currently underway. They're looking at our policies, our procedures, our training, how we're training correction officers in the academy, as well as in service, and then also looking at the culture of our facilities to make recommendations to my office. That review continues, and as a result of this more recent incident, we've expanded that scope to include a review of Mid-State Correctional Facility as well. And again, we will be making a public report once that is available, and I'm committed to making the changes that are necessary. I've long said that people come to prison as punishment, not for punishment, and our job while they're with us is to give them the services and the access to academics and programming to allow them to be better versions of themselves and to go home to their community and their
I'm going to stop it very quickly because there was something that Daniel Martuscello III spoke about in reference to we're having outside entities come in and do some consulting and make recommendations, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's fine. The same thing occurred when Governor Kathy Hochul was talking about putting money for body cameras and having consulting agencies come in. I am a gentleman. I've worked in nonprofits my entire career. There are many NGOs as well that engage in fraud. There's a lot of fraud in the federal government and state governments. And just understand this. Sometimes when you have these problems that occur in government, in these agencies, it's really an opportunity for money grabs, meaning that, yes, let's take a whole lot of money and throw it onto a problem. But is that the real solution for the problem? And oftentimes it's a money grab because they will employ their friends, they will employ their family members, they will give them these large governmental contracts that ultimately result in nothing and really don't change the problem. So, what I will say is that there needs to be fiscal oversight of New York State, of these recommendations that are being made to correct the Department of Corrections. That money that's being spent on body cameras needs to be reviewed. There needs to be oversight, but you can get all the body cameras you want. If there's no accountability, you're spending millions upon millions of dollars on paperweights and trinkets because there's no accountability.
families, which clearly we failed in this opportunity.
Commissioner, how can 30 officers between two prisons so close have such similar intent?
Well, again, the criminal process will play out, and our independent review, whatever it reveals, we'll make sure we uncover every stone and make any changes that are necessary to make sure that we are driving home that this is not the type of behavior that we expect from people that are sworn members or civilian members that work for the department. It's just uncalled for, and I won't tolerate it.
How much of a role did the strikes play in this, given that it seems like in the indictments this started with the National Guardsmen incorrectly broadcasting something over the radio?
Yeah, I mean, clearly we were in the midst of a strike, unprecedented. There had been a strike in 46 years in the corrections department. So, I mean, obviously that had a tremendous impact. The direct correlation to what it played in this particular incident, I'm not going to opine as we continue forward with the criminal charges.
Commissioner, question.
Do you think that there is a systemic and deeper problem with the abuse and accountability inside the prison?
Well, after I watched the videos in the Robert Brooks case, as well as this incident that we're talking about here today that led to the murder of a second individual, from my perspective, I need to question everything going on, right? Which is why we brought in somebody independent to conduct a review, because I want to make sure that if we do have any patterns or cultures, that we get to the heart of the issue and make those necessary changes, because that's not who we are as a department. It's certainly not who we are as a state. And moving forward, we need to make sure that we make the necessary changes, that this doesn't happen again.
Is the
Commissioner
strike to
J.B.
blame for
Nicholas
the
here.
death?
Very quickly, just understand this. Understand that Daniel Martuscello III is a very skilled politician. He's a very skilled orator. He knows what to say and how to say it. But this is the fact of the matter. He's been at the helm for some time. He's been involved and he's been senior leadership of DOCCS for a long time. And if there was the yearning to transform the culture, to get rid of the cancer in the Department of Corrections, it would have been started already. It would have been started. So, these statements are just, they're politician statements. And unfortunately, for those people who don't go deeper, they will hear this and they'll think that he actually cares. I don't believe he cares. I mean, I really don't believe he cares about individuals because how could you be at the helm of this organization and so many deaths, so much brutality, but yet very little is done to correct it. So
Question.
no.
Has any of the guards allegedly killed Robert Brooks? Have they been fired by the department yet?
Now, I'm sorry to stop it again, but that's JB Nicholas asking the question. And in this press conference, you will see JB Nicholas is going to be asking a lot of tough questions. So we have to give him his props, give him his respect for being on site and asking the tough questions. I really appreciate that. And people like JB and other reporters allow me to do my work here and share what they do. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out.
There have been a number of them that have resigned. We do have arbitration hearings that are scheduled in accordance with the collective bargaining agreements, but they've all been suspended and we
And actually, because I was talking, I interrupted. You may not have gotten the question. The question that JB Nicholas asked was, have these officers been terminated? Have they been fired? And so Martuscello is basically saying that they're going through the arbitration process. So all those officers in the Robert Brooks murder case, most of them are still employed by the New York State Department of Corrections. 2 have resigned. It might be more, but two have resigned. So think about this: a murder court on camera. They technically still have their jobs.
are seeking their termination, similar to in this case as well.
And you talked about changing the culture before, but I spoke with several correction officers who've been through, they've all been through the department's academy. And they say that in the academy, they're actually trained to hate inmates. Is that true? And what's your response to that?
No, I don't find that to be the case. I've reviewed the curriculum and actually as of recently, I've had a formerly incarcerated person address the academy class to show what success looks like and the impact that they have on people's lives. Oftentimes it's forgotten the work of corrections and the important impact it has on the continuum of public safety. But if we do our job right and they go back to society, we avoid future victimization, future crimes, and become tax-paying citizens, giving back to their communities and playing important roles.
I understand what you're saying about sometimes that corrections officers can actually sort of like reach a guy, so to speak, in some situations. I've heard corrections officers express that. I've heard prisoners express that, that it happens once in a while. Guards seem to think that cameras will impede that ability to sort of like reach people. You know what I mean? Because they'll always be on camera. And guards are afraid that they'll be disciplined for maybe speaking the wrong way or things like that. Is there any consideration of that? Like, what's your response to that?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, I think that correction officers play an important role in the rehabilitative process, particularly this day and age, partnering with program staff and our teachers and what have you. In terms of the body cameras, I see no evidence of that. And I've heard those anecdotal claims, well, we're going to be disciplined because we speak ill of the commissioner or we speak ill of the superintendent. I haven't disciplined any person that is letting off steam talking about their supervisory staff or anything of that nature. If they're engaging in misconduct, then absolutely we'll discipline them and hold them accountable. But for those ancillary conversations that happen to be caught on body camera, we haven't been able to point to one instance where that's occurred.
Is the strike to blame for the death?
Again, I don't know that there's a direct correlation, but certainly we were under tremendous stress dealing with the strike with almost 10,000 correction officers and sergeants that had walked out to participate in an illegal job act.
Commissioner, were there any red flags or prior complaints against any of the officers involved in Mr. Nantwi's death? And if so, why were they still on duty?
Yeah, so again, we have we've conducted investigations when there's allegations, and when we find wrongdoing, we do go through the disciplinary process through the collective bargaining agreement. In terms of specifics on each individual, I can't recite them here today, and to the extent that may be information for the jury to consider in the judicial process, I'm not going to comment any further.
How many of the defendants were on the search?
I don't know off the top of my head exactly how many the total number is.
DA Fitzpatrick, you detail,
Just pausing it very quickly. So, JB Nicholas had a very interesting question. How many of those correction officers were on the CERT team? I think that's a very important question because the CERT team is, has the reputation of being the goon squad and, engaging in multiple, if not hundreds of beatings that have been occurring. So I wish he would have been able to answer that question in terms of how many of these officers who were arraigned were members of the goon squad of the CERT team. Possibly we'll find that out at a later time.
almost like a bad Hollywood attempt at a cover-up. Meeting at a diner, planning of a night. I just wonder what you make of that and what that says about the attempt.
Well, what I initially make of it, Andrew, is it's criminal conduct. I hope to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury several months from now. But what I will say, and again, this is an impression that I have, is that, some of the people that we interviewed who are cooperators admitted to two conspiracies: one, the planting of the shank, and two, the falsifying the reports.
Just very quickly, there's one thing that William Fitzpatrick mentioned, that in terms of the conspiracy, they conspired to plant a shank in Mr. Messiah Nantwi's cell. Now, for those of you who don't recall, I had Sean Chung, who worked at Marcy, and actually I've had another incarcerated individual speak about Attica. So both have mentioned, and I believe I'm sorry, his name is slipping me, Moshe Canty, right? So both of them mentioned about the planting of evidence being a common occurrence with correction officers. They have access to weapons, they have a locker with weapons, and when they need to, they want to retaliate against an incarcerated individual, they plant an evidence in the individual cell. And in this case with Messiah Nantwi, they they asked for a volunteer. Oh, who wants to say they found the shank? Oh, I'll do it, I'll do it. How stupid is that? How stupid does that sound? I mean, what kind of person that you have to be to just raise your hand and say yes, okay, I'll write down that I found the shank. But the thing is, they all take turns covering for each other. It's systemic. They take turns.
And being a prosecutor, I want to prove things with facts and statements and eyewitnesses, and they kind of looked at me and said, well, it was kind of understood that we do it that way. I mean, that's not good enough for a jury, and I'll present more proof than that. But that to me is problematic. Before the next question, I just want to acknowledge my colleague from Oneida County, the Oneida County District Attorney Todd Cargill, who's in the room. Todd has been very, very much of an assist to me in my coming to Oneida County. And he's also working on things that I won't comment on outside of my jurisdiction that I think will be helpful to me.
DA, with the Robert Brooks case, everyone was able to see the nauseating video that was released by the Attorney General. In this case, not a lot of camera footage. So what is the primary evidence that you have of the beatings in 3 different locations? And can you speak to the brutality of the fact that this began, as you described it, seemingly unprovoked and continued for a length of time?
So this is a very important question and also a very important answer. So the reporter there identified that there were 3 beatings that occurred. Bill Fitzpatrick is going to respond to that, break it down. So really pay attention to this answer because I think it's important.
Well, to answer the latter question first, the indictment speaks for itself in terms of the severity of what the grand jury thought of it by charging 2 individuals with murder. And again, not an intentional murder, but a murder so depraved that it rises to the level of intentional murder. And in terms of the proof that I have, I'll limit myself to what's in the indictment. The indictment alleges that the victim here, Mr. Nantwi, was beaten with fists, with batons, and with boots. And medical examiner testified about massive head injuries. I think one way of analogizing it is, Mike Tyson went through an entire career as a boxer, and no one ever killed him, and he never killed anyone. And his job was to.
And really think about this. I appreciate the illustration that Fitzpatrick gives. He mentions Mike Tyson going throughout his career. Now we do know that many boxers do get hurt, do suffer some level of brain injury or brain damage, but this beating was so severe, so brutal that Messiah Nantwi suffered from traumatic brain injury. Batons, boots, and fists were used to brutalize this individual. Absolutely deplorable.
Hit people in the head and inflict injury upon them. So that should give you some idea of the severity of these alleged injuries.
Do you know how, and did you offer a theory, and apologies if I missed this, as to how it went that morning from basically everything's fine at 10:55 to deadly chaos within like 3 minutes? Like what brought the men accused of beating him to death into contact with him in the first place?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I want to kind of clarify that because I don't want to leave anyone with the impression that I'm blaming the National Guardsmen. Nothing could be farther from the truth. What the grand jury is suggesting is that this is something that spiraled out of control unnecessarily. The alleged contact that began between the National Guard and Mr. Nantwi had to do with Mr. Nantwi interjecting himself in another incarcerated individual's effort to obtain medication. The National Guardsmen did not appreciate that. They indicated that to him. And then further testimony has indicated that Mr. Nantwi oftentimes had problem with what's known as count. Count being a systemic operation where corrections officers want incarcerated individuals in their room, and as the name suggests, they would then do a physical head count of the people. Mr. Nantwi was initially a little resistant to that. After the call went out and before the CERT team got there, that situation had resolved itself by the intervention of Mr. Nantwi's roommate, another incarcerated individual.
So really understand this. What William Fitzpatrick is saying, that he's saying that by the time the CERT team got to Messiah Nantwi's dorm, his cell, that this was already resolved. There was no issue when the CERT team came.
Obviously, it could not have taken him a long period of time. If the call went out at 10:58 and Mr. Nantwi was in his room compliant at 11 o'clock. But again, those are things that the trial jury will hear.
So you say that you're not blaming the National Guard members.
One second.
The 2 conspiracies, you mentioned that they planned them. Did they actually try to carry through planning the night and submitting the reports, or they just?
They went so far as to file reports about that, as alleged in the indictment. In terms of physically presenting at a proceeding, that's not a necessary element of the crime. It only has to be a prospective proceeding. They never got that far for obvious reasons.
So you say you're not blaming National Guard members.
Right.
But they make a call without explaining why they're making the call.
Right.
And the situation resolved. No National Guard members said, hey, everything's fine. Messiah's in the cell, everything's okay. They don't communicate to the CERT team.
There's video of the CERT team coming onto Mr. Nantwi's floor and having probably a 3-second interaction with 3 National Guardsmen. and it's difficult to hear exactly what is said, but it's basically misbehavior. No specifics, nothing like that. There's a difference between explaining what happened, suggesting that it may have happened otherwise, and blaming somebody. I am not in the latter category. I'm not blaming the National Guardsmen. They were put into an impossible situation by an illegal strike. They did the very, very best they could. No one's charging them with any type of abuse of the inmates. I don't think there's been an incident, Dan will correct me, regarding a National Guards person abusing an inmate. So I'm not blaming them. I'm simply trying to give you information to understand how the sequence occurred.
Dear Fitzpatrick, I was here for the last press conference for Brooks,
Yeah,
and I asked you a question about whether you thought that Brooks's alleged murder was indicative of a systemic problem in the Department of Corrections, and you said no. And now here we are 2 months later with another murder, alleged murder, indicted by you across the street from Marcy. And I just heard you say that in response to a question from one of my colleagues, that the cover up in the diner, it was what he said was, this is just how we do it. And you said that was problematic for you. So let me ask you again, do you see a systemic problem with rogue prison guards in the system based on your investigations?
I don't think any rational prosecutor could stand in front of you for the second time in 6 weeks talking about cases that have remarkable similarities and say to you that everything is fine. Okay? People in law enforcement justifiably have a tendency to defend themselves. Wrongful convictions. Oh, we never get it wrong. We never prosecute the wrong guy. And yet historically we know that there have been hundreds of people who have been misidentified, had evidence planted against them, and so forth and so on. Is that a systemic problem nationally amongst prosecutors? I would suggest to you that it's not, based on the amount of prosecutions that occur and the number of wrongful convictions that are discovered. I would also say to you that it is a problem, and there is a problem. I think the commissioner addressed that in his remarks, and I don't mean.
So I just have to stop it there because for me, this is key. I feel as though William Fitzpatrick just kind of barely falls short, a little bit shy of saying there's a systematic problem with the Department of Corrections. He doesn't call it systemic. He says there's a problem. He says there's a problem. Now, I think I truly believe that William Fitzpatrick knows that this is systemic. It's a cancer. It's part of the culture of Department of Corrections, but he is not going to say that publicly. He's not going to say that publicly. So, but in terms of what he in terms of what he did say so far is that he does acknowledge that they have a problem. That is some level of progress, but it's not 1,000% the truth that this is systemic. This is a cancer. This is the culture of the organization of the Department of Corrections in New York State.
To presume that I'm now, 3 months into this, an expert on correctional facilities, I'm not. I don't pretend to be, but I do have some thoughts and ideas that I'm not going to share with everybody now, that I'd like to share with Dan and the governor at some point in the future.
Bill, at the Robert Brooks press conference, you specifically mentioned he seemed to do nothing in his case to bring this on. In your indictment here, it does mention that Nantwi perhaps grabbed a vest of an officer and perhaps a bit, I think, 2 officers.
Correct.
How do you, can you describe his actions against the officers and perhaps what should have been the response?
Well, I'm not going to talk about what should have been the response, but if, 7, 8 certain officers go into a room, I don't think it's unreasonable for a civilized society to expect that the inmate comes out alive. And in this case, that didn't happen. The biting was through a glove. There was no medical attention given to that. I'm sure this will be something Andrew, that will be discussed at length at trial. You do not have the right as a incarcerated individual to bite a corrections officer. You don't have a right to grab their vest.
I'm going to give a little bit of pushback on this, a little bit of pushback. Now, in the Robert Brooks murder, we saw Anthony Farina shove a rag down his mouth. And as that was happening, the instinctual reaction was for Robert Brooks to bite the hand. And we saw Anthony Farina sort of remove himself a little bit, and he looked at his finger that was bitten, right? So when someone is being beaten, when someone is being savagely mistreated, it's going to be a reaction to fight back in some way. And the fact that he bit someone means that his hands were restrained. Again, I'm making an assumption. I'm offering up a theory, but when someone is restrained and they're handcuffed, the only way that they can fight back is sometimes through biting, and that's instinctual. So um, I'm not a big fan of this argument or speaking about the biting per se, and unless you're talking about Messiah Nantwi just walked up to a corrections officer and bit him. And I don't believe that to be the case. But again, I wasn't there. I don't have the full story right now.
But is the response proportional? Is it within protocols? Is it within guidelines? Part of the DOCCS guidelines have to do with de-escalation. What was done in this case to de-escalate a situation that the grand jury has alleged nobody even knew what the hell was.
So William Fitzpatrick brings up two very key words. Two very key words. He mentions the latter word, de-escalation. He mentions de-escalation, and unfortunately, every time the CERT team is being called, they come in hot. They come in ready for battle. They come in ready for war. No verbal skills. No attempt to de-escalate someone. They jump straight to excessive force. There is no, let's simmer this down a notch or a couple of notches. They go straight to brutality, which is not the answer. The second word that William Fitzpatrick mentions, which is key, is proportionality. Okay? Proportionality. Are the officers responding in proportionate to the force being used by Messiah Nantwi? And we know that is not the case. The purpose of the CERT team is to come in and is to restrain an individual if they need to be restrained. Okay, this goes far above restraint. It's not. This is somebody who is eventually being restrained, but they're beaten while it's occurring, and they're beaten after. They're beaten prior to the restraint, during the act of restraining them, and then after the restraint. So this is not the CERT team exercising their right to restrain an incarcerated individual. They're beating this person after the person is no threat. So the word proportionality is key for everyone to consider.
Question for the commissioner. Sorry, just for the microphone. I forget that. As we look at this case and the attempted cover-up being described, I can say I'm sure that my colleagues who also work in local newsrooms get a ton of calls, a ton of emails, especially as the strikes came on, with people alleging that they got beat, they were hit, but were able to walk away from it. So often, officers are able to keep their jobs, otherwise avoid legal action if those allegations are true. Given what's happened here, given what's happened with Brooks, will DOCCS be reopening investigations into any other cases where officers might have gotten away with it?
Yeah, if there's evidence to reopen a case and or allegations against staff, we open cases and we make sure that we investigate those to the fullest. With the governor's investment of millions of dollars in fixed cameras and now body cameras, I think that that'll make our job easier with making sure we get to the heart of the issue and making sure that we have the facts of each case. That way we can pursue it either criminally if it rises to that level and or administratively under the terms of the collective bargaining agreement.
Will the superintendent at Mid-State keep their job?
Okay, I just wanted to stop it very quickly because there was a good question about previous cases. So, OSI, Department of Corrections, are not going to reopen previous complaints or grievances against officers who have beaten incarcerated individuals. That's not going to happen. Okay. What can happen are those individuals who are incarcerated seeking legal representation. Seeking legal representation. So I am making a plea out there. If there are any civil attorneys out there representing those who are incarcerated, I would love to have a conversation with you, because part of what I want to do is educate the public on what recourse incarcerated individuals have who are being victimized, who are being brutalized. So, if by any chance you're an attorney experienced with civil lawsuits, please reach out to me. My information is in the bio and the channel description. I'd love to have a conversation with you, and maybe we can educate the public on, or educate those who are incarcerated on what recourse they have civilly uh, to get some justice.
That's something we'll be talking about internally. I'm not going to opine on that.
Commissioner, the morale in your prisons weren't good during the strike, understandably. They can't be good now, seeing their coworkers be indicted now twice, two groups. I just wonder what new efforts are you taking to make sure that the people that show up to work every day feel safe, feel appreciated, and can effectively do their jobs?
Yeah. First, I mean, obviously the strike, right? Obviously that put a lot of strain on those that stayed, those that left and came back, and then with the number of staff that are terminated. So we're working closely to work on safety initiatives as outlined in the memorandum of agreement. But in terms of the morale as it pertains to this particular incident or the Robert Brooks case, I think the vast majority of correction officers that this conduct sickens them when they see what was on videotape in the Robert Brooks case and what they'll hear about as a result of this indictment. I don't think that this is what, when they look in the mirror, who they see. So I don't know that this in particular is going to drive their overall morale of themselves, but put a black eye on the agency as a whole. So I think, we'll continue to work cooperatively with our workforce, an aggressive recruitment campaign to attract the next generation of correctional professionals, as well as we work on the safety issues that they've identified.
Just to follow up.
Post-strike, do you feel adequately staffed?
Oh, right now we are definitely have a high vacancy rate of correction officers, which is why we've launched an aggressive recruitment campaign. The governor in the budget has recommended that we lift the residency requirements of the contract with a corrections-based recruitment firm to bring more staff to the table. And we have seen an increase of interest in people applying for and taking the exam.
But is it a problem today?
Say what?
Is it a problem today, the staff?
Yeah, I mean, there's a national shortage of correctional.
So I just want to stop it very quickly, because for those of you who don't know, my background is in human resources. I've been in the field of human resources for close to 25 years. And prior to that, I used to work in group home facilities as a director of direct care, supervising childcare staff and helping kids who were in crisis. So just one quick thing, and he may have said this, he may say it within the next couple of minutes. But speaking about the morale first, the morale obviously is going to be horrible, non-existent for anyone working for the Department of Corrections. Not only, this is more than just a black eye in for correction officers. This is a comatose situation. This is the correctional profession looking horrible, looking horrible. Okay. So I can't imagine the number of good, quote unquote, good correction officers who are working for docs, because I would think that most of them would have abandoned their jobs. They would have quit already with the widespread corruption, the widespread evil and brutality that's occurring. You would have to sully yourself. You would have to get yourself just as dirty as these correction officers who are brutalizing these individuals. So I would think most people would leave. I'm sure people who are listening out there, you've been in a circumstance in which you've worked in a very corrupt place. It doesn't have to be Department of Corrections. Most of you have not. But if you've ever worked in a place where you saw corruption and evil, and it was so widespread that you could not do anything about it, people typically leave because staying, either you will get sucked into that culture or you will be ostracized for not engaging in that level of corruption. There's no way that you can just turn away. So that goes to the question, what is a good corrections officer? If you can do me a favor and write that in the chat, maybe in a couple sentences, tell me what you think a good correction officer is. And can you be a good correction officer knowing all this brutality is occurring at the New York State Department of Corrections? Can you be a good correction officer if you are falsifying documentation? Can you be a good correction officer if you're looking and turning the other way? Let me know in the comments.
Workforce across the nation. Prior to the strike, we were certainly not immune to that. And post-strike, we are certainly dealing with staffing, which is why the National Guard stays in place, and we'll be very grateful for their service and then helping us through this trying time.
Just to follow up to what something you said before about additional resources. So since Brooks's alleged murder, I think the governor said she would commit additional millions to the department to upgrade the security features. How many internal OSI investigators have been hired since Brooks' death?
We're actually out actively recruiting and expanding OSI. We've reconfigured a new division for the Public Integrity Division, merging our internal investigations and our sex crimes unit into public integrity. And we've posted over 100 jobs, which we received over 600 resumes, and we're actively interviewing for those individuals. And these are people that are external to the department.
Has any reassurance been offered to prisoners right now, incarcerated individuals?
Just a quick side note. Daniel Martuscello mentioned posting 100 jobs, getting 600 resumes. If I understand that correctly, that's basically the equivalent of 6 resumes for every 1 job that you have. Those are not very good numbers. Those numbers are poor. They're poor numbers. But can you see why nobody would want to work for the Department of Corrections, especially working as an OSI investigator? The reason being is that you investigate your ass off wrongdoing that's occurring, and there are no consequences. So what investigator wants to do a job in which they investigate wrongdoing and nothing occurs afterward? How is that a real job? Who would want who would want their job unless your intention on having this job is to protect your buddies back in these correctional facilities?
After these 2 events, to ensure them that this is, as you guys say, not the norm, and just anything that's been done on incarcerated individuals' rights?
Yeah, sure. So I routinely talk to incarcerated individuals across the state, whether it's issuing a memorandum or sending out notices through the tablet technology, or when I'm in facilities. Since the beginning of the strike, I've been in 24 different facilities talking with both staff and incarcerated, and I've directly addressed not only the Mr. Brooks murder, but the murder of Mr. Nantwi with the population, and we've had ongoing discussions relative to that and answered their questions.
Just want to ask Ruben or Reverend if you'd like to address.
Thank you. I want to thank.
Could you just please give your name?
Sure,
sir?
Ruben Lindo. I'm also a community activist. Work closely with the Special Prosecutor's Office. One of the things that has come up, I was here a few months ago for the Robert Brooks, and I've spoken to Robert Jr. and his father. But the key in this situation that I think is overlooked, and we've said this, and I've written several white papers in the last 3 months, and I'll share them with the media. If you get with me afterwards, I'll send them to you. And in my white papers, I discovered that there was not a culture of violence within the Department of Corrections, but perhaps a character issue. And I can only say that because we're here.
Okay, so I just wanted to stop it for a quick second. I'm not too familiar with this gentleman in terms of what he's saying. I do have an issue with the comment that he just made, saying that there isn't a culture of violence, but there's a character. So I don't agree with what he's saying. I've heard his full statement before. I don't agree with him saying there's not a culture of violence at docks. I strongly disagree with that statement. I think it is a strong culture of violence at docks. This is not just a few isolated incidents or a few bad apples. This is the culture is corruption. The culture is brutality. So let's continue to see what else he has to say.
Again, not only, about 2 months after, right? So it's very difficult when you work with the community like I do, you work with law enforcement like I do globally. I work with law enforcement, and we are working very hard to create what we call the bridge of transparency. And I've talked to Commissioner Martuscello's office extensively. The key tenet to safety in all of these facilities is transparency. And that's what we're hoping to get today. That's what we've gotten from both Commissioner and Special Prosecutor have promised the community. Those out there in the community, I urge you to allow the wheels of justice to do what justice does. And let's let justice be served for the 2 individuals that lost their lives senselessly. Thank you.
I just wanted to pause it very quickly because something important came to mind for me, right? Whenever you have a struggle, whenever you have an injustice and you have various stakeholders who are fighting against the injustice, people serve different roles. So my role is to expose the corruption, is to call it out 100% for what it is. I do not expect to be able to have a meeting with Daniel Martuscello III. I do not expect to be invited to have lunch with the NYSDOCCS union president. I don't think that's going to happen. I truly don't think that's going to happen. My opinion and who I am, I have a different level of voice. So this individual who just came on, and my apologies, I already forgot the name. He's working with Daniel Martuscello. He is, I would think, a community activist. So he is not going to have the same level of voice that I do. He's not going to have the ability to call it out and say Docs is corrupt. Docs is brutal. There's a culture of brutality. He may not be in the place to say that because he's not going to be sitting at the table and giving feedback. It doesn't mean that I don't respect him. I don't respect individuals in that capacity. It just means that their level of filter is going to be higher than someone like me, okay? Or a reporter, or a JB Nicholas, or a Chris Gilardi from New York Focus, Blaze Gomez. These reporters have a different voice in this struggle in voicing their opinion. So this individual is going to be a little bit censored. So just acknowledge that that is the case. It doesn't downplay the work that he's doing. I'm sure he has a very important role. He's advocating. But in order to be sitting at the table with Daniel Martuscello, he cannot say what I say. I just wanted to point that out.
Last question. Go ahead.
Which came first, the biting or the beating of the inmate?
The grand jury has alleged that the biting was well after the assault had started. Not to be rude, but next time I talk to you will be after a verdict in the Brooks case. I don't comment. If you call my office and ask me about a ministerial thing such as a time or place or something, I will absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to stop it here. Basically, that's pretty much the end of the press conference. Fitzpatrick basically says, don't bother me. Just leave me alone. The next time you hear from me is going to be when we have a jury verdict or after plea deals are public and announced and pled in court. So that's the end of the press conference. I do very quickly just want to go over a few of the comments and acknowledge people who have been here. Thank you for being here. We'll jump to Thomas Wyatt. Thomas says, morning critical. I'm glad you're covering this. Let's get this all over the United States. This ish in New York shouldn't be happening, costing taxpayers a lot of money. Thank you. Yes, this is costing taxpayers a whole lot of money. If you're living in New York State, you should be appalled that many civil suits are being settled. Many are going to trial. Large monetary awards are being made. It's coming out of your tax dollars, out of your tax dollars. All right, let's move on to a couple other quick comments. Jason says, so-called law enforcement are the epitome of evil. I would think why a lot of people would think that because of the abuses. The abuses have to stop. Locust says there have been 269 causes of death that were not reported, unexplained, or redacted going back to 2000 in New York State prisons. That superintendent isn't ish. So that's from Loca. So that's a very strong opinion. Thank you for sharing it. Really appreciate Loca. Appreciate you being here on a consistent basis. Thank you. Loca says, good morning. Shannon Oliver says, good work, my brother. Keep the pressure on the necks of these racist snow bunnies. This scene been going on for decades. Big life, Bronx bound. Yeah, the abuses have been going on for a very long time, for decades. John from Buffalo. John, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. For everyone who just came on later, this is me. Please like, share to support the channel, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I greatly appreciate it. Helps with the algorithm. Locust says there's a politician right now that wants the governor and New York State docs to immediately reinstate terminated correctional officers so that docs has the power to bring back the staff who have experience. Yeah, my opinion on that, I'm not really sure what to think. I don't think these officers, I think if you terminate someone, you look very weak if you have them come back. So, and ultimately, it will show that they got their way. John says that this is the way they handle business for years. They've been planting weapons on prisoners for years. But we as society also turned a blind eye to this abuse by giving officers the benefit of the doubt. I think to a large extent, John, we have turned a blind eye to all of these abuses. We have ourselves to blame for not putting pressure and for not demanding accountability. Fox 5, Team Healthy says, once they convicted by the state, DOJ going to come with the federal charges. That's a very interesting comment. So we will see what happens after we have plea deals, after we have convictions. But it might be possible that these plea deals and these convictions on the state level will satisfy the federal government and those charges. We don't know. We shall see. Loca says Messiah bit them after they were already killing him. Yeah, I mean, you're getting the crap beaten out of you. A bite is, that's nothing. That's the only level of self-defense he would have, would be to bite, especially if he's handcuffed. John says this is the way they've handled business for years. And as we, as a society, also turn a blind eye to the abuse officers has done or been accused of. We have turned a blind eye. We have. Thomas Wyatt, I do like critical how you get and pick the wording out. It's important. Great job. Thank you so much, Thomas, for the acknowledgement. Yes, any communication, you have to listen to what people are saying. You have to listen to the wording. I will say, I am more of a fan of this press conference than the one with Robert Brooks. The one with Robert Brooks angered me. I did not like a lot of what William Fitzpatrick said during that press conference. This press conference seemed different. There was a different tone. He was stronger. His office advocated for more bail. I did appreciate that. John says, let's be real. If they open all cases of abuse, it will not be a New York State docs. Yeah, these cases of abuse have to be on the state level, criminal charges. John says there was a lot of good correctional officers, but let's not be naive. They know about it and they head to the abuse by the colleagues. So they want to be called inmate lovers, also assaulted. So that raises a very good question, John. If someone turns a blind eye, if they see these abuses and do nothing, are they a good correction officer? Are they a good correction officer? Maybe I'll do a specific video or live stream about that. I've been dying to get active correctional officers on. Nobody wants to come on the channel. No one wants to have a conversation. Deanna Brooks, good morning, listening from North Carolina. Thank you for being here, Deatra. Thank you for being here, Loca. Mainly, they should be honest, impartial, treat all inmates fairly, have empathy, and have many skills like good decision making and communication, and much more. Loca, thank you for the comment. I truly appreciate it. Thank you for being here. I do want to close, and in my closing, I do want to share the images of the officers who have been indicted. So here we have the officers who have been arraigned on charges being murder 2, manslaughter 1, conspiracy, false instrument, and tampering with evidence. Here we have those individuals that have been indicted, arraigned, and all have made bail, and they will be coming back to court mid-May. So for everyone who's been here, I want to thank you for coming on. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for going deeper and watching this press conference and really listening and hearing to what Fitzpatrick said, the Onondaga County District Attorney, who's the special prosecutor, and also hearing what the DOCCS commissioner was saying and how he answered questions, William Martuscello III. Thank you so much. Some of you may not be able to contribute financially to the channel. That's fine. But what I will ask, if you are a consumer of the content, please do me a favor. Please like the video. Please comment. Please share the video to others who need to see this. And if you have not already, please subscribe to the channel. There are literally thousands of people that are watching the content on a consistent basis, that come back and watch the videos, but you haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Please subscribe to the channel. As they say, let's put a ring on it. Let's make it official. You like the content, you watch, subscribe. Appreciate it. With that being said, take care. God bless, and see you next time. I'm doing a live stream tonight at 9 p.m. going over an update with Christopher Quiles, who was beaten the day before Messiah Nantwi. His case is active. He was not killed. He is alive. So I am speaking with the family member of Christopher Quiles tonight at 9 p.m. Please come and take part. Take care. God bless, and see you next time.